The invitation to Sarah's parents' housewarming party arrived in a cream-colored envelope, embossed with shimmering gold lettering, bearing the name of an elegant banquet hall in Middleton, Wisconsin. It felt like a symbol of success, of the house I had poured my heart into renovating. My heart skipped a beat as I held the envelope. Honestly, I felt proud. On the day of the party, I chose the finest suit in my closet, combed my hair more carefully than usual, and added a touch of cologne. I stood before the mirror, adjusting my tie, trying to look as polished as possible. Chloe, my daughter, ran up, hugged my leg, and beamed. "Daddy, you look so handsome," she said, her voice clear and bright. I nearly cried, but just smiled and ruffled her hair. "I am Thomas Bennett, 46 years old, a warehouse manager at Badger Materials in Madison, Wisconsin. My job isn't glamorous. I wake up at 5 a.m., inventory lumber, cement, and steel, ensuring everything's ready for the construction crews. Sometimes, I stay late to handle urgent orders. But I love the small moments, when a driver thanks me for a timely shipment, or when I finish the day knowing I've helped build homes somewhere. Those little compliments, though small, make my efforts feel worthwhile."
Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the latest video.
Looking back, it all began the day I decided to help Sarah's parents renovate their house. I grew up in Milwaukee, in a working-class neighborhood. My father passed away when I was young, leaving my mother with debts and 2 younger siblings. I once dreamed of being a civil engineer, designing grand structures, but that dream faded when I had to work to support my family. I worked in warehouses, delivered goods, and eventually settled into my role at Badger Materials. Though I didn't achieve my dream, I'm proud I helped my mother and siblings through tough times. Maybe that's why I'm always ready to sacrifice for those I love. Sarah, my wife, is a project manager at a major marketing firm in Madison. She's smart, ambitious, and has a way of drawing people's attention. When I met her 11 years ago, I was captivated by her confident gaze and big dreams. But her family, Edward and Patricia Mitchell, always made me feel inadequate, unworthy of Sarah. I tried not to let it bother me, focusing on making her happy. One evening, Sarah's mother called. "Thomas, Sarah says she wants to help us renovate the house," Patricia said, her voice full of hope. The house in Middleton was over 50 years old, with cracked walls, a leaky roof, and faulty wiring. Sarah wanted to transform it into a modern home and throw a grand housewarming party. "It's our family legacy," she told me later, her eyes sparkling. "Chloe will have a beautiful place to visit her grandparents." "Thomas, what do you think?" I looked into her eyes, thinking of Chloe, of the family memories I wanted her to have. "All right," I heard myself say, though I knew it was a big decision. Renovating the house required $80,000, nearly our entire savings. Sarah and I had been saving for a new home of our own, but she convinced me this was more important. "Just this once, Thomas," she said, holding my hand. "We'll take care of ourselves later." I nodded, despite my worries. To make it happen, I drained most of our savings, took out a small loan, and cut every expense. I gave up plans for a new car, bought fewer clothes for Chloe, and canceled weekend outings. I worked overtime at Badger Materials, sometimes until 10 p.m., inventorying goods under dim lights. Some days, I only saw Chloe when she was already asleep, and that broke my heart. I didn't ask for anything from Sarah or her parents. For me, seeing the Middleton house renovated, seeing Sarah happy, was enough. The project took nearly a year. I frequently visited Middleton, checking progress with the contractors. The house transformed, walls painted bright white, a new roof gleaming, a living room with large windows overlooking the garden. Edward and Patricia seemed pleased, but they rarely spoke to me directly. They thanked Sarah, as if I were just a background supporter. I didn't mind, thinking it was just their way. As the project neared completion, Sarah started talking about the housewarming party. She wanted to invite friends, colleagues, and relatives to a luxurious banquet hall in Middleton to show off the new house. "It'll be amazing, Thomas," she said, her voice excited. I was excited too, choosing my best suit and helping Chloe make a handmade photo frame for her grandparents. I imagined the party as a moment of family togetherness, where I'd see Sarah's smile and feel the joy of my sacrifices. But I had no idea that day would shatter my entire world. I always believed love and sacrifice would be reciprocated, even if just with a heartfelt thank you. But when the first signs of the truth emerged, I began to realize how naive I'd been. After agreeing to spend $80,000 to renovate Sarah's parents' house in Middleton, I not only depleted our savings, but also worked overtime and cut every expense to pay off a small bank loan. Sarah knew this, but she grew increasingly distant. Our conversations became brief, often only about her work or the upcoming housewarming party. She rarely asked about my day, and sometimes I caught her eyes gliding past me as if I weren't there. At first I told myself Sarah was busy. As a project manager, she frequently traveled for work, met clients, and worked late. But then, small details started raising doubts. Once I got a bank alert about a large transaction on our joint credit card, a bill from a high-end store in Chicago. I asked Sarah, and she just laughed, saying it was a gift for a client. I trusted her, didn't press further. But unease grew, like a tiny thorn in my heart. A few months into the renovation project, Sarah called me from a business trip. "Thomas, I need more money to cover expenses here," she said, her voice slightly shaky, as if anxious. "Work is stressful, and I don't want mom and dad worrying about the house." I didn't think twice. I assumed living costs in big cities like Chicago were high, and Sarah needed money to maintain a professional image. So I started sending extra $500 a month at first, then over $1,000. I didn't say a word, just quietly transferred the funds, thinking I was helping her and her family. I cut back further, skipping new toys for Chloe, though she'd been eyeing a puzzle set. I told myself, once this phase passes, things will be fine. But then, the truth hit me like a shockwave. One afternoon, during a lunch break at Badger Materials, I was eating with Lisa, a close colleague. She scrolled through her phone, then suddenly turned to me, eyes wide. "Thomas, is this Sarah?" she asked, handing me the phone. On the screen was Sarah's social media post, showing her in a stunning dress, standing outside a fancy Miami restaurant. Designer shopping bags sat on the table, with a caption, "Treating myself to a fabulous day." I froze, my hand trembling as I scrolled. More photos showed Sarah at a lakeside resort, then another at a spa, captioned, "Well-deserved relaxation." No sign of the busy business trip she'd claimed. I felt my blood rush. The money I sent, money I saved by working overtime, by denying Chloe new things, had fueled Sarah's lavish lifestyle. While I worked myself to exhaustion, she was enjoying vacations and luxuries we could never afford together. I scrolled further, seeing more posts, designer shoes, a lakeside party trip she never mentioned. No hint of financial struggle. Sarah was living a life I only saw in movies, while Chloe and I scrimped to support her and her family. But what hurt most was Chloe's birthday. She'd just turned 8, and I threw a small party at our Madison home. We invited her friends, baked a homemade cake, and decorated the living room with colorful balloons. I wanted Sarah there, thinking she'd make Chloe happy. I called, invited her home, but Sarah said, her voice rushed, "Thomas, I've got a critical workshop in Chicago. I really can't miss it." I believed her, comforted Chloe that mommy was busy, and she gave a small smile, hiding her disappointment. But days later, I opened social media and froze. Sarah posted a photo, on a Florida beach, holding a cocktail, beaming, with the caption "Weekend Vibes." No workshop, no Chicago. She'd lied to go party with friends. The phone felt unbearably heavy in my hand. Sarah hadn't just misled me about money. She'd ignored Chloe's birthday, the one thing our daughter looked forward to most. She didn't send an apology, a gift, or even a message to Chloe. Our daughter had waited for her all day, but Sarah chose beaches and cocktails over her. That truth cut through me like a knife. Everything I'd done, the savings, the late nights, the sacrifices for Chloe, was so Sarah could treat me like an ATM, a bottomless source of money she could tap without guilt. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lying in our quiet bedroom, listening to Chloe's steady breathing, I stared at the ceiling, feeling my every belief shatter. Sarah had never offered heartfelt thanks, never valued what I did. But what I couldn't forgive was how she disregarded Chloe, the daughter I loved more than anything. I'd always stayed silent, thinking sacrifice was how to show love. But now, a new feeling stirred within me. I couldn't keep being the one who gave without respect. I knew things were about to change. I walked into the banquet hall in Middleton, Wisconsin, full of anticipation. The hall was more stunning than I'd imagined. Soaring ceilings with crystal chandeliers, tables draped in white silk, and soft classical music, playing like something from a movie. Sarah's parents' house, just nearby, newly renovated with $80,000 from my savings, was now the Mitchell family's pride. I tightly held the handmade gift Chloe and I had crafted, a photo frame engraved with her grandparents' names, feeling proud of my sacrifices. The suit I wore, though my best, suddenly felt out of place in the lavish atmosphere. At the reception desk, I gave my name, Thomas Bennett. The woman checked the guest list, frowned, then looked up with an uneasy expression. "I'm sorry, I don't see your name," she said, hesitating. I smiled, trying to stay calm, and pulled the invitation from my pocket. "Here's my invitation," I said, handing her the cream-colored envelope. She took it, reviewing the list again, when a sharp voice cut through from behind me. "Thomas, what are you doing here?" I turned to see Sarah and her mother, Patricia, standing there. Sarah stared at me, her eyes a mix of surprise and irritation, as if I were an intruder. Patricia didn't even look at me. Her lips pursed, her face grimacing. "What do you mean?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "You invited me to the housewarming party." Sarah shook her head, her tone icy. "There must be some mistake. Your name isn't on the family list. This isn't your place anymore." I felt my blood run cold. "My place," I repeated, my voice low but trembling. "I'm your husband, Sarah. I paid $80,000 to renovate that house." "How can you say that?" Patricia, standing beside her, finally spoke, her voice low but cutting like a blade. "Thomas, you've never belonged here." She still wouldn't look at me, continuing as if speaking to the air. "What's a warehouse manager doing at a gathering of accomplished people? You were meant to stay behind the scenes, supporting us. Showing up like this is laughable." I couldn't utter a word. My throat tightened, as if being squeezed. In my hand, the photo frame Chloe made trembled, because I was gripping it so tightly. Sarah looked at me, flashing a dry smile. "Your role is done, Thomas. We don't need anything from you anymore." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice faltering. She didn't blink. "I mean you're no longer needed. This isn't your place." My heart pounded, my fingers ice cold. I tried to keep my mind from going blank, but everything felt like it was collapsing. Everything I did, was it just a task to be completed? I whispered. Patricia muttered, still not looking at me. "You've always been out of place, Thomas. How could someone like you understand the atmosphere here?" I stood there, frozen, feeling as if the entire room had fallen silent. Every eye was on me, but I didn't dare look up. "Go home, Thomas," Sarah said, her voice commanding. "That cheap suit is honestly embarrassing us." Those words hit like a punch. I felt all the sounds in the banquet hall vanish, leaving only the thumping of my heart. "Security," Sarah called, her tone calm. "Please escort this person out." He wasn't invited. A man in a black suit approached. "Sir, I'm sorry, but you need to leave." I stood rigid, as if in a dream. What I'd just heard wasn't real. Not a single tear fell, but inside my chest, something cold and heavy sank. "I understand," I said, my voice too calm, as if it weren't mine. I turned, not lifting my head, not straightening my back, just walking slowly, barely hearing my own footsteps. The stares of others pierced my back, but I couldn't look up. I focused only on leaving the banquet hall, without a word. Outside, Middleton's cool air didn't lighten my heart. I couldn't go home right away. Instead, I wandered to a nearby hotel lobby, sitting in a corner of the lounge. The cushioned chair absorbed my body's weight, but my mind still reeled with the words I'd heard. "Your role is done. This isn't your place. How could someone like you understand?" To them, I was just an outsider, a tool that had outlived its usefulness. I glanced at the clock on the lounge wall. The party was probably still going, with Sarah and her parents receiving congratulations, as if I'd never existed. I couldn't let them keep treating me as invisible. I took a small breath, whispering to myself, "It's time to tell the truth." I stood, walking back to the banquet hall, each step more resolute. Pushing open the hall's golden doors, I saw a man, likely Sarah's colleague, speaking on stage, praising the Mitchells' new house as a work of art. Sarah stood beside him, smiling confidently, a completely different person from the one who'd just thrown me out. I approached the MC, saying quietly, "Let me say a few words, just a couple of minutes." He looked at me, slightly surprised, but perhaps seeing the determination in my eyes. He nodded and handed me the microphone. As I stepped onto the stage, a wave of murmurs spread through the crowd. I wasn't afraid. Standing under the stage lights, I faced the curious gazes and began. My voice calm, almost warm. "Hello everyone. I'm Thomas, Sarah's husband. I came today to celebrate her family's success." The room's tension eased slightly. I chose my words carefully. "I know everyone's proud of the new house in Middleton. I was proud too, once. But there are things you should know." The hall fell silent. That house cost $80,000 to renovate. That money came from me, from my family's savings. I paused, scanning the crowd. Sarah said she needed extra funds for work expenses, so I sent more each month. But the truth is, that money went to resort vacations, lavish purchases, while my daughter Chloe and I cut back on everything to help. Sarah shouted from behind, trying to interrupt. "Thomas, that's enough." But my voice over the mic drowned her out. "I did everything for this family. I paid for the renovations, worked overtime, even skipped buying toys for Chloe to save. But today, Sarah and her mother told me, 'Your role is done. You don't belong here.' They kicked me out of this party." The room seemed to hold its breath. I looked straight into the crowd, seeing Sarah's face flush red and Patricia's head lower. Pale, I wanted this day to be a celebration. But now I declare it the day I take back my life. I stopped, the stage lights searing my skin. "If standing here makes me out of place, then so be it," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "But the one person isn't me, needs to rethink their place." I handed the mic back to the MC. I left only the truth behind, and stepped off the stage. As I walked away from the hall, I felt a strange relief in my chest, as if I'd shed a heavy burden I'd carried for years. Outside, Middleton's cold air enveloped me. I wasn't the Thomas from hours earlier, the one who entered the hall with naive hopes. I'd stood up, not for revenge, but for myself. The words I spoke weren't just to expose Sarah or her family. They were a reckoning, an affirmation that I wasn't invisible, not a tool for them to exploit. That night, returning to my home in Madison, Wisconsin, I stepped into Chloe's small room. She slept peacefully, her face tranquil, oblivious to the insults I'd endured at the Middleton party. I sat by her bed, watching her, whispering, "I'm here for you, Chloe." I nodded, knowing I had to change. Not just for me, but for her. I told everything to Mark, my friend from high school, over the phone. "Thomas, I was worried you'd give too much, hurting yourself to lift them up." He sighed. I shook my head, voice choked. When Sarah wanted their house renovated, no one else had the money. I was the only one who could help, so I thought it was the right thing. I gripped my coffee mug tightly. But after everything, why did they say those things? What did I done wrong? Mark looked at me through the video with sincere eyes. "You didn't done nothing wrong," he said. "You were too good, and they took advantage. You thought family meant carrying everything. But now, you get to set boundaries." His words hit me like a light in the dark. I knew I couldn't keep living in unconditional sacrifice. Emotions couldn't fix this. I needed action, something concrete. The next day I called a lawyer in Madison, James Carter, who specialized in financial disputes. I told him, "I want justice for the $80,000 I spent renovating my in-laws' house." He nodded, asking for all relevant documents. I gathered renovation invoices, the contractor contract in my name, and evidence of Sarah's lavish spending, social media photos, credit card receipts showing purchases of designer items and vacations. Carter reviewed everything carefully, then said, "The renovation contract is in your name, and you have a right to seek compensation. We'll start with a formal notice. If they don't cooperate, we'll proceed with a lawsuit." I decided to separate from Sarah, not just for the insults, but because she deceived me, ignored Chloe, and treated me like an endless money source. I rented a small apartment in Fitchburg, Wisconsin, and moved there with Chloe. The apartment was simple, but enough for us to start over. I told Chloe, "From now on, Daddy's going to take good care of you, okay?" She nodded, hugging me, and I felt a new strength. Days later, I sent a legal notice to Sarah and her parents, demanding compensation for the $80,000 or repayment of the misused funds. Their response came quickly. Sarah called, voice furious. "Thomas, what do you think you're doing? Demanding we pay you back. Are you trying to destroy my family?" I replied, calm but resolute. "Do you remember who paid $80,000 to renovate that house? I did everything for you and your family, but not a single thank you, not a shred of respect. I have no reason to stay in this relationship." Patricia called, soon after, voice trembling with anger. "You dare demand money from us? We've lived in that house for years." I took a deep breath, keeping my tone even. "Do you remember who paid to renovate it? I took on that responsibility from the start, but now I'm done carrying it." I paused, then added, my voice quiet but sharp. "And didn't your daughter say my role was done? If so, maybe Sarah can help you now. She's a successful manager, isn't she?" Silence hung for a moment, then the call ended. I felt relieved, as if I'd cut an invisible rope that had bound me for years. A week later, my lawyer said if Sarah and her family didn't meet the compensation demand, we'd file a formal lawsuit. I didn't hesitate. I was tired of letting emotions rule. I wanted to resolve this with truth and evidence, not empty promises or vague feelings. Eventually, Sarah and her parents agreed to negotiate, but not before trying to intimidate me over the phone. They called me selfish, a family wrecker, but I didn't waver. I'd done more than enough, and now it was time to protect Chloe and myself. When the negotiation concluded, I received partial compensation, enough to ease my financial burden and start anew. I didn't want a dramatic legal battle. I just wanted to close this chapter, step by step, with clarity and fairness. Sitting in my new apartment in Fitchburg, watching Chloe play with her old puzzle set, my heart felt lighter. I was no longer the Thomas of blind sacrifices. I'd stood up, not out of anger, but because I deserved respect. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready, for Chloe. For myself, I would build a new life, where I was no longer anyone's tool. That night, in my Fitchburg apartment, I pulled out a notebook and started writing. I jotted down ideas, needs families unable to afford home repairs, kids growing up in rundown houses, hardworking people with no chance to improve their lives. I realized this wasn't just about Sarah or her family. It was about me, about Thomas, who once dreamed of creating something meaningful. I wanted to help people like my old self, those who needed a chance to live better. The idea for the Bennett Housing Fund was born. I wanted to start a nonprofit to help struggling families in Madison renovate their homes, not just for shelter, but so they could take pride in their space. I didn't have much money, but I had warehouse management experience, contractor connections from Badger Materials, and a burning determination. I shared the idea with Mark, my high school friend. He laughed heartily, clapping my shoulder. "Thomas, this is you, always finding ways to help others." "I'm all in." Karen, my colleague, joined too. She helped me with financial planning and reaching out to community organizations. I rented a small office in downtown Madison, just a simple room with a window overlooking the street. Mark handled the legal paperwork to register the nonprofit, while Karen contacted local donors. I worked nights, after Chloe was asleep, drafting proposals and seeking families in need. Every step was tough. Paperwork, budgets, endless meetings. But I felt a new energy. For the first time in years, I wasn't working for someone else. I thought back to my days in Milwaukee, when my mother struggled to keep a roof over our heads. I thought of Chloe, how I wanted her to grow up in a world where hard work meant opportunity. The Bennett Housing Fund wasn't just a project. It was how I reclaimed my dream, turning pain into strength. Mark once said during a meeting, "Thomas, what you've been through, they're not scars, they're your strength. The support from real-life experiences, that's what makes others trust you." His words lifted me. I no longer waited for someone to help me. I became the one who offered help. I started reaching out to struggling families in Madison, from single mothers to workers like me, people who couldn't afford to fix a leaky roof or replace a window. Each story I heard felt like a piece of my own life. I knew this was the path I had to take. Chloe, though young, sensed the change in me. One evening, as I read her a bedtime story, she hugged me and said, "Daddy, I love you like this. You look happier." Her words warmed my heart. I realized I wasn't just rebuilding my life, but also shaping a future for Chloe, a future where she'd know a person's worth isn't in what they sacrifice, but in what they create. 6 months after the idea for the Bennett Housing Fund was born, I stood in a small hall in downtown Madison, Wisconsin, my heart full of emotion. The hall was simply decorated with balloons and a sign bearing the fund's name, but the atmosphere was warm thanks to the smiles of everyone present. Today was the fund's first event, where we announced support for renovating homes for 3 struggling families in Madison. I looked around, seeing unfamiliar yet friendly faces, the supported families, volunteers, and even colleagues from Badger Materials. Chloe stood beside me, wearing a green dress she'd picked herself, tightly holding my hand, her eyes sparkling. The event began with my short speech. I wasn't used to public speaking, but holding the mic, I felt an odd confidence. "Thank you all for being here today," I said, my voice slightly shaky but sincere. The Bennett Housing Fund was created to help struggling families have a safe home, a place they can be proud of. I once thought I couldn't do this, but with the help of friends, colleagues, and my daughter, we made it real. The crowd clapped, and I saw Karen, my colleague, smiling from the front row. Mark, my best friend, gave a thumbs up, as if to say I'd done well. The 3 families supported this time had stories that moved me. A single mother, Maria, clung to her 2 young children as I handed her the home renovation confirmation. A house with a leaky roof and cracked walls she'd struggled to maintain. Maria gripped my hand, tears streaming, repeating, thank you so much." I placed a hand on her shoulder, saying softly, "It's okay, your family deserves a good home." The other 2 families, an elderly couple and a single father raising a child, shared their joy too. Seeing them, I felt a quiet happiness, as if the wounds from the Middleton housewarming were slowly healing. After the event, Chloe tugged my hand, her voice radiant. "Daddy, you're amazing. I want to grow up and do this too." Her words warmed me deeply. I hugged Chloe, whispering, "You're why I do this, you know that." For the first time in years, I felt proud, not for sacrificing, but for creating something meaningful. I was no longer the Thomas treated like a tool by Sarah and her family. I was Thomas Bennett, Chloe's father, the founder of the Bennett Housing Fund, and a man living true to his values. Days later, a stack of letters arrived at the fund's small office in Madison. I opened each one, reading clumsy but heartfelt lines. "Thanks to you, my family has a new home. I'll try to help others like you did." One wrote, "Thank you for giving my kids a safe place to grow up." Another said, "Those simple words, though modest, touched me." I held them close, closing my eyes, feeling a quiet joy. I didn't start the fund for reward, but knowing my choices brought light to others' lives made every effort worthwhile. Looking back, I knew I'd chosen right by standing up at the housewarming, confronting Sarah and her family. Their insults had once shattered me, but now they fueled my change. My life with Chloe now is simple, but fulfilling. We have new routines, walks in Elmwood Park on weekends, baking cookies together, or just sitting under the warm glow of our Fitchburg apartment's lamp, reading books. Chloe, now 9, grows more confident, always talking about her dreams of being an artist or designer. Seeing her, I see a free, radiant girl, something I only dared dream of as a kid in Milwaukee. I know cutting ties with Sarah and her family was right. They're no longer part of my life, and I don't need them to feel valued. The Bennett Housing Fund is gaining community attention. Local businesses have offered sponsorships, and I'm planning to expand support to nearby Wisconsin areas. Each day I learn more, managing funds, working with contractors, listening to family stories. But my core belief stays the same. Everyone deserves a home, a place to start anew. That's my life's new purpose, and I won't stop. When Chloe ran to hug me after the event, I felt everything I'd fought for a future for her, a meaningful life, was in that embrace. I'd found myself again, no longer just a sacrificer, but a change maker. I sat on a wooden bench in Elmwood Park, Madison, Wisconsin, watching Chloe romp on the grass, her laughter blending with the cool breeze. My life now is made of moments like these, simple, yet complete. After what happened at the Middleton housewarming, after Sarah and her family's insults, I found a new path, living for myself, for Chloe, and for those who truly need me. I don't know much about Sarah or her parents, Edward and Patricia, after our separation. Rumors say Sarah struggled in her career after the lawsuit, her reputation tarnished by what I revealed at the housewarming. Edward and Patricia, instead of supporting her, seemed to blame her for the failure, and eventually, they cut contact with her. But hearing those stories, I felt nothing. Their lives are the result of their choices. Once family, now their paths no longer cross mine. I've learned that sometimes, cutting ties is the only way to move forward. The Bennett Housing Fund has become my passion. From our first event, supporting 3 Madison families, we've expanded to other Wisconsin cities. I'm planning a program to train underprivileged youth in construction skills, giving them a chance to build their futures. Each day I learn more, from fund management to listening to family stories. But what never changes is my belief: everyone deserves a home, a place to start over. That's the purpose guiding me, and I know I won't stop. Chloe, now 9, is a vibrant, free, dream-filled girl. She paints, reads, and talks about becoming an artist or designer. Seeing her, I see myself as a boy in Milwaukee with big dreams. But now, I know how to protect hers. Julia, the woman who entered my life after those tough days, brings gentleness and understanding. She never speaks grandly, but her eyes always make me feel seen. Once, she said, "Thomas, I'm proud you found your path." Those words sank deep into my heart. Sitting in Elmwood Park, I felt a peace I once thought I'd never have. I no longer fear being looked down on. I no longer live for others' needs. Each day, I live as a true man, with my real family, and a community that needs me. Chloe ran up, hugging me, shouting, "Dad, look!" She held up a wild flower, grinning brightly. I stood, opening my arms, and Chloe leaped into them. "You did great," I whispered, holding her tight. In that embrace, I knew I'd fought for a future worth having. Not just for Chloe, but for myself. It will never be stolen, never trampled. I'm no longer just a warehouse manager who sacrifices. I'm a giver of opportunity, a builder of homes, and above all, a man living his life. I've learned that a person's worth isn't in blood ties, but in genuine relationships. With Chloe, Julia, and the Madison community, I've found my true family. And I know this path, though hard, is the right one. Thomas Bennett's story reflects challenges and values deeply relevant to life in the United States today, especially amid financial pressures, family expectations, and the journey to rediscover oneself. Thomas, a warehouse manager in Madison, Wisconsin, sacrificed $80,000 from his savings to renovate his in-laws' house, only to be humiliated by Sarah and her family at the housewarming, treated as an outsider. This betrayal, coupled with Sarah's misuse of funds for a lavish lifestyle, and her absence at daughter Chloe's birthday, mirrors realities in America, where family financial strains often lead to tense relationships, and kindness is sometimes exploited. Thomas's expulsion from the party, mocked for his warehouse manager job, also highlights class divides in American society, where manual labor is often undervalued compared to white-collar professions. Thomas's journey, from confronting publicly at the party, suing for compensation, to founding the Bennett Housing Fund, embodies resilience and a core American value, self-respect and the ability to reinvent oneself. Value your worth, and set boundaries in relationships, even with family. Thomas's story teaches us that sacrifice, like cutting back on Chloe's expenses to support Sarah, shouldn't be blind. In today's America, where financial pressures and societal expectations can push you to prioritize others' needs, learn to say no when kindness is exploited. As Thomas did by demanding compensation. Moreover, his creation of a fund to help struggling families renovate homes, inspired by his own pain, reminds us that setbacks, like the housewarming humiliation, can fuel positive change. Turn hardships into opportunities, as Thomas did in Elmwood Park, finding peace with Chloe and Julia. Finally, prioritize genuine relationships, like Thomas with his daughter and community, as they are the foundation for lasting happiness in America's competitive society today. Subscribe to the channel to follow journeys like Thomas's, rediscovering self-worth and making positive change. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.